I'm Brenda Nyongesa in Nairobi. Welcome our viewers in Kenya and around the globe. This is the Makeover Show that takes an exclusive look on evocative issues affecting public attitudes in sports and education. But first, let's get the news-making headlines. The National Youth Service has deployed 27 buses to alleviate the commuter crisis in Nairobi occasioned by the ongoing heavy rains. NYS Director General Richard Dumbai said the decision to deploy the NYS buses was made to save commuters from the high fares that are charged by public commuter vehicles during the current season. Elsewhere, 2 men have been fined a total of 77 million shilling for their role in the multi-million shilling land that was set to be used as a graveyard. The jailed men were part of a group of 4 city council officials, and the court convicted them after dismissing their defense that they did not play any role in the land scam. On the international scene, at least 35 people were killed and scores wounded when a rocket struck a busy market in a southeastern suburb of the Syrian capital. Reports have indicated that it was repeatedly come under fire by rebel forces in the nearby eastern Ghouta. That's all from our news bulletin. We will be drawing our topic of discussion from the Syrian attacks that we've just seen on our international news. The topic of discussion will be education in crisis area, and the question is, can education thrive in conflict areas? Remember, you can send in your views. My Twitter handle is @Brenda_Nyongesa, and of course, the hashtag is the Makeover Show. So don't go too far. We'll be back in a short while. Welcome back, and many thanks for staying tuned. Remember, this is the Makeover Show, and we are discussing the issue of education in conflict areas. Over 50,000 Syrians died in the eastern Ghouta in a busy marketplace, and this is not something that is new to Kenya because such attacks happens in Elgeyo Marakwet, northeastern Baragoi, and also Baringo. So what do you think about that? Can education really thrive in conflict areas? I've seen a couple of you are actually sending in your tweets. And Winnie Chepkoech is telling me that no, one of the humanity most fundamental rights, the right to an education, is also often one of the first to suffer during times of disaster or war. Conflicts can result in children becoming orphaned, being pressured into joining the armed forces, marrying young, and victim of sexual abuse. Thank you so much, Winnie, for your comment. Keep them coming. Remember, my Twitter handle is @Brenda_Nyongesa, and of course, the hashtag is the Makeover Show. Our reporter Winnie Maganga has been following up that story for us, and she'll just be telling us what are some of the attitudes of people regarding the topic and what she thinks about this topic. Welcome, Winnie.
In conflict zones, it is children who often bear the brunt of violence since they cannot play, sleep or attend school. In recent past, schools in Elgeyo Marakwet had to close down following attacks from cattle rustlers. This was also witnessed in Samburu County among pastoralists, which has become more militarized as activity has taken an economic turn affecting education systems in the area.
In my opinion, I feel no. There's political instability and it's not conducive environment for study, and children will really suffer in such a hostile environment.
Furthermore, schools-going children along the borders of Wajir are staring at a bleak future after non-local teachers began fleeing from schools after an attack suspected to have been executed by Al-Shabaab militias.
Yes, I think it can thrive if the government puts a lot of effort on security and mainly to give incentive to the teachers who are teaching, and also coming up with another pattern of socialization to the people who live there to focus on education.
Given the recurrence of attack, there is need to prevent educational institutions and facilities. The rationale behind this argument is that education provides critical opportunity for children and young people, and this is especially true for those living in conflict zones.
Well, Brenda, you see, conflict has been part of life for people living in northeastern Elgeyo Marakwet, Baringo, and in West Pokot. And in my earlier conversation with the residents here, some are positive that the education will normalize while others are relenting. So for the residents here is a wait-and-see attitude. But I think to safeguard children, basic human right to education, the government should ensure that schools that are within the conflict zones are shielded by enforcing mechanisms to prevent attacks on educational facilities. This is one story we are keeping an eye on, and we will update our viewers in case of any developments. Back to you, Brenda.
Thank you so much, Winnie, for that report. I've seen that a couple of you are continue tweeting in, and Faith Kaulu is telling me definitely not. A sad but true fact, education cannot thrive in such areas because either young boys will be recruited to be part of the army or young girls will be victim of rape and early pregnancies, an effect that is very long term. So Faith Kaulu doesn't think that education can thrive in conflict areas. Continue staying tuned, then we will be back with more. Welcome back to the Makeover Show. We are continuing to discuss about education in conflict areas, and with me in studio I'm joined by some panelists who are going to explore more on this topic, and they'll just be telling us what they think about the topic of the day. And today the first person who will be just telling us what he thinks is Daniel Bior, who is an international student at Daystar University and is also from South Sudan. Daniel, thank you so much for making time to come to our studios.
Thank you.
And since you are a Sudanese, how many years have you stayed in Sudan before coming to Kenya?
I've lived for 10 years in South Sudan.
How did you cope up with life in those 10 years?
Yeah, I managed because of my parents. They were the one who took care of us, and yeah, it was not easy. But through them, we were able to cope the situation. They could hide us in caves and in hiding places.
With all the wars and conflicts, how did you manage to study in South Sudan?
Okay, some of us were just brought to the border of Kenya, where we were given education, especially the UN were the one giving us free education.
And those who managed to study in South Sudan, how do they do this? Do they continue, discontinue, or how have they been coping up with education there?
Okay, for them, when it's time for war, the study stop. Then they resume after the peace has returned in the area. So it was just off and on thing.
Has the authority done anything to improve education in South Sudan?
Yeah, they're trying hard. They're trying hard to improve education sector in South Sudan. Especially they were using the old South Sudan, which is the Khartoum, but now we are South Sudan, so they're trying to come up with our education system, or our curriculum, our South Sudanese. And most of us, for instance, me, I did my education, especially, I did my KCPE in Kenya, but I was also studying in South Sudan, bordering Lokchogyo, so I did my KCPE there.
Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Bior.
Thank you, I appreciate you for asking me to be here.
Thank you. Our second panelist is an education specialist who is Paul Ogola. He'll just be exploring on different system of education in the country. Mr. Ogola, thank you so much for coming to our studios today.
I'm grateful.
What are some of the policies that have been put in place in conflict areas?
Kenya has ratified so many treaties based on education policy. They are very vivid in Article 53, 1, Section B, whereby every child is entitled for basic education. The state has the mandate, it has the duty to ensure that every Kenyan, be it young or old, they are mandated for education.
Should students in conflict areas being given a special consideration when it comes to international tests or tests like KCPE and KCSE?
They should be given an opportunity to also exercise what they have. Apparently, look at a student in Brookhouse and look at this student in Baragoi. And government should consider these conflict educational areas. I think they need to grade down the pass mark, considering the disparity in those marginalized areas.
What can be done to improve education in such kind of areas? Talk of Elgeyo Marakwet, Baragoi, Baringo, and Northeastern. What can be done to improve education in such kind of areas?
Number one, everything relies with the government. And therefore, the government should ensure that the people under her umbrella are safe by implementing the policies that we've just talked about. The community must also participate in doing this. The government, no matter how organized and strict it is, it cannot succeed minus the help of the communal power. Number three is to ensure that the children are motivated, ensure that there are police stations, ensure that the chiefs are at work at any time. I like telling people that use your pocket to feed your mind by seeking education. Down the line, your mind will feed your pocket with a lot of money, and you will not be a failure. You will be a success, and you will become a signboard to everybody who will be under your umbrella.
Thank you for your time, Mr. Ogola.
Bless you.
Our third and final panelist is Mr. David Wambulwa, who is an international education specialist, who will just be telling us what are some of the conflicts or what are some of the challenges that are faced in managing conflicts in conflict areas. Mr. Wambulwa, thank you for coming to our studios today.
Thank you very much.
Take the likes of Syria, Baringo, and Congo. What are some of the ways on which conflicts can be prevented in such kind of areas?
Various diplomatic measures can be used to resolve this conflict. And when you talk about diplomacy, you are talking about mediation, that you are mediating, you are negotiating, you are arbitrating, you are engaging in certain acts, diplomatic mechanisms to resolve this conflict.
And in the process of solving all these conflicts, what are some of the challenges that are faced in coming up with a solution to this problem?
Thank you very much. One of the major challenges in resolving these conflicts is the fact that there are hardline positions, that there are certain groups, there are certain parties to a conflict which assume very hardline positions. Another one is that sometimes these conflicts, they are intractable in the sense that the issues are very complex. It takes quite a lot of effort for such conflicts to be resolved. Certain circumstances you find that if there is lawlessness, if there is that culture of violence, you are bound to have conflicts which are sustained.
Areas like Syria, Congo, and Baringo, do you see any future of education in such kind of places?
Yes, there is a future. There is a future for education in such societies. And as I say, education now is the game changer. Education is the one which is supposed to socialize these people to move away from loving conflict, from carrying that gun. And once a society begins loving education, begins building institutions of learning, then that is a sign of normalcy. That is a sign of this society moving away from conflict to a peaceful society. So yes, there is hope for education only if the conflict is addressed.
Thanks for making time to come to our studios today.
Thank you very much.
Those are some of the guests that we had in our studios today. I see a couple of you continuing to send your tweets on my Twitter handle at Brenda_Nyongesa, and I'll just read some of them. Kevin Kagwanja is telling me that yes, it can. The government just needs to make the schools public boarding schools and provide enough security in the schools. Every child has a right to quality education. So Biggie thinks there's hope for those people who live in conflict areas for education to thrive in those areas. And Lindangari is saying thrive. I don't think so. There's no that peace of mind to facilitate good learning. Not even the teachers, most of whom recently left these areas. Education should be availed in these areas. It may not thrive, but it can survive. That's some of your comments that are actually coming in. We'll take a quick break, so don't go too far. Thank you so much for staying with us. Today we majorly focused on education in conflict areas, and I think education is a basic tool for every individual, and if we hold hands together, we can do something about the root cause of this problem and come up with ultimate solutions so that education can improve in conflict areas. Thank you so much for watching, and remember to like, comment and subscribe, and also continue the conversation online. My name is Brenda Nyongesa. Blessings.